Coming up next on Channel 4, a roundup of the news and views around Westminster this morning in House to House.
The privilege.
We've had the privilege.
If you're paying over £300 for motor insurance, it's time you had the privilege. You could save £150 or more on cover that comes with a host of benefits. Call Privilege on 0990 700 700 and see how much you could save. Isn't it time you had the privilege?
Get your new Grattan Autumn and Winter Catalogue by calling 0800 313 313 now. Grattan have the clothes to make you look and feel great. You get 20% off your first order, and you can spread your payments interest-free. And if life's a little less than perfect, relax. Grattan's couriers can deliver the very next day. For your Grattan Catalogue, call now on 0800 313 313. That's 0800 313 313.
Take an issue of the week. This is the way they want you to think about it. But what if someone were to take an alternative opinion and argue convincingly? Okay, maybe it's not so black and white. Then someone else asks an unexpected question. Whoops, changing your mind yet again. You thought you knew which angle to take. You thought there was only one way of looking at it. But perhaps it's that outlandish opinion that's right, and not what they've been trying to tell you. Something beyond the pale. Deliberately provocative, making you think. Saturdays at 7:10 on 4.
You're watching Channel 4, where now Sheena MacDonald presents today's House to House.
Good afternoon and welcome to House to House. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it worked. Labour's awkward squad may mutter, but as Tony Blair wins NEC support for his Road to the Manifesto document, what better proof could his party need that the changes worked than this morning's Conservative relaunch of their Get Bambi campaign? So will New Labour's dissident voices now pipe down and enjoy the party? We shall hear. Also, the Lord Chancellor tells us he's braced to defend his legal aid reforms against a mounting chorus of protest from the legal profession, but admits the white paper may not be the last word. Yes, it costs. Yes, it's essential. Paddy Ashdown promotes cradle-to-grave education and sets his electoral cap at Britain's poorest voters. And the future is multicoloured and multimedia, but not for everyone. Winners and losers under the government's new media ownership rules look forward to different futures. That's all after the news from Cathy Smith.
The Lord Chancellor has defended his plans to overhaul the system of legal aid, saying it would not deny more people access to justice. Lord Mackay said the new limits on the legal aid budget would mean resources were concentrated on the most deserving cases. But critics claim his sweeping changes will reduce the system to chaos. Prison officers have begun a full-scale search for explosives at a high-security jail in Worcester. Inmates at Long Lartin were locked in their cells early this morning as the search took place, apparently following a tip-off. It's not thought that any convicted terrorists are currently being held there. The Home Secretary has announced plans to tackle organised crime by setting up a special national squad. Michael Howard said the new body would have its own chief constable and an overseeing executive with members drawn from police authorities around the country, as well as independent members and a Home Office representative. The Conservative Party has launched a new £5 million advertising campaign attacking Labour after admitting previous efforts had failed to dent Tony Blair's popularity. Labour said the change in strategy was a sign the Tories had been forced onto its ground. The party's ruling executive is meeting this morning to agree its draft manifesto for the next election. 12 anti-government extremists have been arrested in Arizona and charged with planning a bombing campaign. The men, all members of a group calling itself the Viper Militia, are accused of planning to blow up 7 U.S. government offices in Phoenix. Police seized bomb-making equipment, including 400 pounds of explosives, and they're expected to make more arrests soon. The actress and model Margot Hemingway has been found dead at her home in California. A officials said they'd eliminated the possibility of suicide, claiming her death was probably linked to epilepsy. The actress, who was a granddaughter of novelist Ernest Hemingway, had recently suffered from bouts of alcoholism and eating disorders. In the city, trading's been cautious ahead of tomorrow's monthly meeting between the Chancellor and the Governor of the Bank of England. A short time ago, the Financial Times index of 100 leading shares was up 4.8. On the foreign exchanges, the pound has fallen almost 0.5% against the dollar, and sterling's unchanged against the German mark. And that's the news. Now back to Sheena MacDonald.
So Labour's National Executive has been meeting to put its stamp of approval on the party's Road to the Manifesto proposals. The document, which Tony Blair was photographed personally redrafting at the weekend, will be launched on Thursday. But it's already come in for criticism from within the parliamentary party, as has Mr Blair's tough leadership style, which has spearheaded recent changes. But loyalists continued to deflect attacks from rebels and Conservatives alike as they arrived for the National Executive this morning.
Yes, this is an important meeting for the Labour Party, and I think people will be struck by the contrast. While the Conservatives are prepared to spend £10 million simply on black, negative propaganda, telling lies about Labour, it's the Labour Party that's setting the future direction and strategy for this country with our Road to the Manifesto document, which will talk about how we can equip the country for the future, tackle social division, and renew our politics.
Meantime, this morning, the Conservatives launched a preemptive attack on Labour's manifesto plans. The new Conservative slogan, New Labour, New Danger, mimics the opposition's own self-advertising and reflects Tory awareness that previous negative campaigning has failed. This morning's press conference saw Tory Chairman Brian Mawhinney and Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine present what they called New Labour's real manifesto, which they dubbed the Road to Ruin.
The issue is not whether Labour has changed. It is now clear that it has. The issue is whether New Labour is fit to govern. It is not. Labour is not sanitised. It is dangerous, as judged by their own words and deeds. New Labour is a careful public relations construct. It is designed to convince people that Labour's new policies are safer than their old ones. They may be new, but they are in many ways more dangerous. New Labour, new danger.
With me now, hot foot from that Conservative press conference, is our political editor, Eleanor Goodman. It looks like a capitulation to Labour tactics and changes. It's a very elaborate document. Is this more than negative campaigning?
Well, obviously, in saying that Labour has changed, the Tory party runs the risk of actually playing to what the electorate wants, i.e. time for a change. They also run the risk of stretching credibility too far. They say that their focus polling, which they all do, shows that the electorate thinks that Labour has changed, that they use the phrase New Labour. Therefore, they have to deal with that perceived reality. So having accepted that Labour has changed, they then try and create new fears. So hence this really rather ponderous document. And I must say there was a double act with Michael Heseltine and Brian Mawhinney, which was painful to witness, really, as they did a sort of news quiz type duo. And what they try to do is they try to anticipate the kind of warm words which they say will be in Labour's document on Thursday. They then parody it. For example, they say they anticipate that on Thursday the manifesto will say a new Labour government would do all it can to ensure that this new programme of investment is successful. But then they go on in the parody, we must return to the targeting of growth that proved so fruitful in the days of Harold Wilson's national plan. And they then go on to source that and then give in blue type a little explanation of what they say Labour really means. But it is a fairly painful process to witness. Having said that, you have to remember at the last election, I think most of us thought they were mad to go on with that single phrase, Labour's tax bombshell. Day after day after day they did it, and we all said to them, what are you doing? You're driving us mad. But it worked. So you can see their tactics, and that's why, for all Labour's joy this morning about the fact that the Tories have vindicated Blair, they said he's new, I think there must be a little worry that maybe they've hit on something.
Eleanor Goodman, thank you very much indeed. Well, we're speculating, of course, ourselves on what the Road to the Manifesto will contain on Thursday. What are the main themes and policies expected to emerge from that document? On the economy, we'll attempt to very finely Labour's tax and spend image. Spending departments will be asked to identify savings first, so on health, Labour intends to redirect money to patient care by cutting red tape. Similarly, on social security, it's proposed that the private sector should become more involved in pensions and welfare provision. On education, the party has pledged to keep grammar schools and grant-maintained schools and allow streaming in comprehensives. In industrial policy, there are no plans for renationalisation of privatised companies, including rail. And on devolution, referenda will now be held in Scotland and Wales, a U-turn that caused that row, including resignations last week. To discuss Labour's road to the manifesto plans, joining us now is Alan Simpson, one of 3 MPs whose loyalty the party leadership called into question in a leaked document. We're also joined by Roger Stott, who was James Callaghan's parliamentary private secretary when he was Prime Minister and an opposition frontbench spokesman until last year, and by Judith Church, a member of Labour's campaigns team, who's closely identified with the modernising wing of the party. Alan Simpson, the party's riding high. The Tories have been forced to change their campaigning tactics, and here you are beefing in the Sun newspaper today. What's the matter? I mean, do you want to win the election or not?
Oh, I do, and I think that the public as a whole are fed up to the back teeth with the Tories, and the next election will be about how we get shut of them. But they also want a change of policies and not just a change of people in the seats. And I think that what we have is a Democratic Party which is going to be faced with very real difficult decisions about how to start to clear up the mess. And I think you're making a meal out of this in the sense that a Democratic Party ought to